We are live with Jay Lucas.
What? Who?
How long have you been Ruka?
Tēnā koe, Pat.
Tēnā koe, talofa. Ni hao ma. Welcome to Otipoti.
Tēnā pai kite a koe.
Now listen, this is the kind of thing I've been looking forward to do most of all.
Oh, sure.
It's having mates in just to spin shit.
Awesome.
I mean, I just picked you up from the airport and 3 times on the way and I'm like, I have no idea what we're going to talk about.
3 times, man, you just poured out your heart.
Yeah.
I picked you up off the floor.
But one of the things, and come on, you're a muser. You're an award-winning muser. Get into that mic there.
Oh.
One of the things I
now.
wanted to start with, and what I definitely do want to talk about is your surname.
Okay.
Because I think you've got a very cool surname. And I think when you told me the story way back when about grandfather, great-grandfather, World War One,
right?
I've told that story to numerous people. Well, because it was a snapshot of how Māori were treated in New Zealand, in their own land, at a certain period of time.
Right.
So when I met you, you were Jay Lucas.
All right.
You were Jay Lucas your whole life, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that
I
has,
was.
and the scale of your life has fairly recently changed.
It has.
Tell us the story.
Tell us the story. Tēnā koe hoa, nā mihi nui a kia koe. It's jolly good to be along here to share some thoughts. So, what is the story of the name change?
Yeah.
The story, the actual family story is, my no he uri no Taranaki ahau, so I whakapapa to Tiatiawa from Waitara. My family left when Tiatiawa went on the heke south to Porneke, to Wellington. And so my great-great-great-grandfather, his name was Hohepa Piri, he had a son who was called Tāre Ruka Hohepa, and he became known as Tāre Ruka. Now, Tāre ended up shifting down to Westport, which incidentally is where I grew up, and shifted there, when I was about 14, but I didn't know any of that story then, at that time. And Tāre Ruka became known as, at the time, at least this is a story a great auntie told me, they called him Charlie Lucas. Right. Because they couldn't be bothered saying Tāre Ruka. And so Tāre Ruka, he had a son called Enoka Taite Ruka. And Enoka, his name became Robert Allen Lucas. So his English name was Robert Allen Lucas. And anyway, when he joined the Pioneer Māori Battalion, when he joined the New Zealand Forces in 1814, his sort of a name became officially sort of Robert Allen Lucas at that point when he joined the army. So that was my great grandfather. So he was born in Westport, and him, when you look at his enrolment forms for the military, his form says like Robert Lucas, and then in between the Robert Lucas is an X, and then someone has put above it initialed or put his mark. So he just signed an X. Right. He didn't sign Robert Lucas. He just signed an X when he was filling out the forms to join the army. He incidentally went to Gallipoli. Him and his 2 brothers, and they all survived. They all survived Gallipoli. They survived Alexandria, and they came back.
And am I
which
right?
Is very random.
Am I right in saying at that particular time, if you were Māori in the armed services, you didn't get paid or something?
Look, I don't want to say 100%. 100% they didn't get paid. What I do know is that on coming back, they got shafted coming back, both in World War I and World War II. There was a promise of land, but all that stuff never happened for Māori soldiers, all this sort of thing. But yeah, so anyway, I find out that history and I find out that story, and for me, it's a process of growing, I guess, more into my Māoritanga and learning about Te Ao Māori and the Māori world. Because even though, I call myself a Kinder Surprise, right? Like, white chocolate on the inside, milk chocolate on the outside, because I wasn't raised up in that Māori world. My grandfather told his kids and told that they weren't going to be raised in the Māori way. So my granddad would not let my nan kōrero te reo Māori. So she wasn't allowed to speak.
What was the reason?
Māori around
What was the reason?
The reason was it wasn't cool. It wasn't
like, so this is the way forward. We need to fit in with the new
way forward is the Pākehā world.
Right.
So we're going to do our best to leave our Māori-ness behind, you know. So my father, who just clocked 75, kia ora Dad, he, you know, him and his siblings were pretty much not raised at all in that Māori vein. So me growing up, and it probably wasn't till I was 30 that I was like, hang on a sec, I need to know a bit of stuff here. I need to grab a hold of a few things. And in pursuing of that, I discover this story. And a couple of things happened. One, you locked it on your phone and started calling me by that.
Just pause. Explain that one to Jace. So Jace, when I heard the story, I changed Jay's surname in my phone to Ruka. So from that point on, that's what it was to me.
Yep. I had a friend, Te Waka McLeod, and she would say to me, Jay, are you gonna change back? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I've never really thought about it. And I also had a dear friend of ours, Linda Burson Swift.
Yep.
I was sitting across on a sofa, and she was on a chair in front of a fireplace once in Tamaki, and she looked at me and she says, Jay, when are you going to change your name? And I was like, oh, okay. I thought, well, it's funny you say that. I've been thinking about it. And then a couple of years ago, I had the privilege of going to a course called Pūmaomao, run by Enoka and Christine Murphy. They run a decolonising course, just going through the history of colonisation, learning about Māori worldview. And he essentially shared his story about he was raised with a Pākehā name, and his coming out through him decolonising himself was the process. What he ended up changing his name back to Enoka, and this sort of thing. I can't remember what his English name was, and I remember I was actually sitting next to Te Waka at the time, and I'm like, well, it's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? And so I sort of made my mind up, and I thought in the publishing of a book would be the good time to do that 2 years ago, so I did.
How did the whānau react? Because obviously, is your mum and dad are still Lucas?
They are still Lucas.
And siblings as well?
Siblings are still Lucas.
Do you feel a weight to kind of, I was going to say convince them, maybe they're the wrong words, but certainly to let them know what your decision is and to get their input as well? Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I did. Yeah. I wouldn't have done it without my mum and dad giving me their sort of blessing to do it.
Yeah.
So that was a conversation that happened, and I didn't want an answer straight away from them. I let them sit with it for a while. And I mean, incidentally, straight away they were like, "Look, mate, if that's we trust you. If that's what you feel like you're supposed to do." And then, so sat on that for a month, and then sort of re-picked up the conversation, and they were pretty much keen, because it is fleshing out that which I believe my life's about doing, and that is learning more and engaging in Te Ao Māori. So.
And did you do it by depol? So it's all official and
haven't
legal?
Haven't officially done it yet.
Okay.
The reason for that is I'm in a cross-cultural marriage with cross-cultural passports, and it's a lot trickier. And
what about the kids at school? Surnames are?
All Ruka.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're all, in Whangaroa where we live, they're all known as Ruka. We're all known as Ruka.
Yep.
But officially we haven't changed it yet, because for whatever reason, we actually have to be in the US to go through the process over there with their US passports and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, it's very complicated, more complicated than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, so even for yourself, you can't. I understand.
I could do it. Yeah, I could go ahead and do it.
But
easy,
you need to you want to do it properly.
But I don't really want to do it without the whole whānau going into it. So yeah,
that's interesting. I was thinking as you were talking about learning a bit of your own history, your family's history. The idea might be a bit of a trope, so to speak, but that idea that if you don't know your past, how can you look into the future, sort of thing. Have you experienced that? Have you figured out, learning more about your whakapapa, your history, has that helped you move forward?
Absolutely. I think, a couple of things. One, I remember at high school, Buller High School. Kia ora
Buller.
to all my Buller mates. I remember asking a mate, Blair Dixon, kia ora Blair, who I remember asking the start of one year, I said, bro, what subject are you studying or something? And he goes, I remember him saying history. And I remember going, history? I'm like, bro, why do you want to learn about dead dudes? Let's just go surfing, you know? Because such was my thought at the time being. And then I guess it wasn't until I was in my 20s that something of history got turned on to me. And it was a real sort of watershed moment was hearing the history of Christianity in New Zealand for the first time.
Right.
And that was, you know, I've been brought up in Christianity. I've been I've been a leader in Christian organisations. I've been a pastor at a church, all this sort of stuff. But it wasn't until I heard that history for the first time that I was gobsmacked. I was gobsmacked.
Why? Why is hearing the Christian history of New Zealand lead you to being gobsmacked?
A couple of things. There was a window in our history where the influence of Christianity in New Zealand was absolutely profound.
Is that in to do with around the treaty and stuff as well?
Pre-treaty,
yeah,
and leading into the treaty, post-treaty, particularly post 1845, has been all turns to custard. But before then, there's stories of there's a bit of a negative story at the start when the way the mission started, and then sort of post Henry Williams and William Williams coming in. There's a great missionary part, but then the way Māori took to the story of Christianity and made the story work for their tribal societies and their people was absolutely profound. So
right.
Our people took it into their way of life and their way of being in a profound way. It was a key influence, obviously, in the signing of the treaty, and then post treaty is when the influence of like one thing I sort of say is like in with the missionaries creating the treaty, they also almost signed away their own mana as to what the government did, particularly from 1847 onwards. Yeah.
The idea of that influence early on, I don't think it's a very well known story, you know. And I know that I learned, in connection with you, this is one of the things that we get to know each other and people like Keith Newman and his book Bible and Treaty and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a really unknown story in New Zealand's history.
Well, I didn't know it, and I didn't know it, and I was part of the church. You know, I mean, you know, there's definitely streams of Māoridom, particularly Te Tai Rāwhiti, who they know this story and grow up with this story over on the East Coast. But you know, I didn't know it at all. I mean, I didn't know. You know, the only thing I remember in 13 years of schooling about Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the treaty, was that Honeheke cut down the flagpole 5 years after it. You know,
and that's
so I didn't know I didn't know any of the details.
And that's one of the examples that I've used a dozen times. Because, you know, hanging out, hearing these stories through you and your contacts and other people, you learn the real story about Honeheke cutting down the flagpole.
Right.
Which no one knows about, because everyone hears that story and goes, oh, bloody native causing a bit of trouble. But when you go, it was a flagpole from his forest on his land, and he had an agreement with the Crown, and when they broke the agreement, he went, stuff you, I'm taking my flagpole down. You kind of go, well, that sounds fair enough. It's a completely different story from, it's not even that
what was taught to us as the
it's not even that it's taught to us. I think sometimes it's just implied.
Right.
You know, those cheeky natives causing trouble back in the day, cutting down flagpoles. Yeah. I mean, I don't remember hearing that as a negative necessarily, but when the full story is not told, it's left as an implication that he was causing trouble.
That's what. So 13 years of schooling, that's all I can remember. And so I go, okay, I'm 44 now. I'm glad the government's, you know, passed the rule to say that in 2 years' time history will be taught through all schools. But what does that say for the leadership of structures in New Zealand right now who don't know the story? They don't know the history. You know, well, so we've got to educate this country on what has happened in our beautiful nation of ours.
I think there's also the question is who's you know, divvying up the actual history course they're going to be teaching as well. Because just to say we're going to be teaching New Zealand history as compulsory, I mean, like I
which version?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they say the winners, the winners write the history. Who are the winners in that back in that era, and what are the historical plots that actually have been written?
It will be interesting to see what comes forward. I'd like to think that somehow we can be a part of putting some good storytelling forward. Yeah, definitely love to be a part of that.
So you have moved and what's this? The Legend of Honeheke.
Legend of Honeheke.
Oh, Billy T. James. Back in that era, and what are the? We've got the.
Oh dear Lord.
Oh, hello. That's a bit of a nice sight there.
Classic one.
Mate. I can't believe it.
I just remember this as a kid,
Really?
He was iconic, eh?
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious.
So what are you doing now? I mean, I guess we were spending time together, mate. What would it have been? Last decade?
Yeah, if you say it like that. Yeah.
No, I mean, is that when it was? Like I'm thinking about that time frame sort of thing. Probably, what would have been last decade?
Guess so.
Second half of last decade. And you were going down this path of figuring out about, your story and kind of bringing it into your life to help others learn as well. Like you say, the leaders now still have to learn. What are you doing now?
I guess, going from where I was a part of the awesome pastoral team at Edge Kingsland in Auckland, I left there because I knew I had to learn te reo. I had to learn the language.
Right.
So it's something that I hadn't done before. So I had to at least start. So Erin, my wife, and I were able to. We shifted down to whāingaroa, one, because we knew we were supposed to leave Auckland, and two, we knew I had to start learning the language. So I was able to be a part of a epic course in whāingaroa there. Shout out to Neria Mataira down there. So I was able to go and start learning te reo, and over the process of that also gave me time to finish off writing a book that I had imagined writing for 7 years. So it took me 7 years to write Hui Ya Come Home. That shifting to Raglan enabled me to finish it. I had 13 months sort of full time locked in, polishing that up, editing it, and getting it out there. In the process of that, some other conversations with mutual friends started happening. And all that to say, cut a long story short, is that at the start of this year, we started some friends and I started an organisation called Oati, which means oath. A shout out to the Treaty of Waitangi and the oath that was made, the pledge that was made back there in February 1840. And so a couple of things we're interested in doing is we want to support Māori to either learn te reo or learn theology. So we've been able to sponsor 14 young Māori leaders this year. We also have a couple of friends who are working in organisations to help bring tikanga and kaupapa and a Māori worldview into their workspace, more than just like a token consultancy type of approach, but really working with the leadership team to see the Māori worldview come.
So is that kind of a consultancy then?
It is. It's a couple of friends working with an organisation a day a week, and just journeying with them and the way they lead and the way they process their their gathering spaces as a staff, and bringing in mihi, bringing in whakatauki proverbs, bringing in waiata songs into their workspace. So basically implementing a Māori worldview into the way that they do things and into the way that they lead.
And does that happen amongst, I mean, obviously it sounds like you're saying this is something that you've started, but in your experience with the businesses and spaces you've been working with to bring this in, is it happening amongst predominantly Pākehā groups, or is there always sort of a Māori influence to bring it in?
Predominantly Pākehā groups who you would say have become woke, who have gone, whoa, hang on a sec, I need this history is important. I need to bring this into my present, and want to bring their workspaces into that, into being a bicultural space.
So what are the benefits of a predominantly Pākehā workspace adopting Māori values and practices?
A dear friend and kuia Mata Wharehoka in Parihaka, I remember her saying to a room full of Pākehā once, and a few of us Māori hanging out there, she just said, look, every Māori person in this country is bicultural, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
And every Māori person in this country is bicultural out of necessity. Not every Pākehā in New Zealand, in fact, most Pākehā New Zealanders are not bicultural.
That's interesting.
So when let's just put the term multicultural to the side for the moment. But if we just want to be bicultural, then there's a long way to go. That means when you are comfortable to walk in my shoes, and you can be in my space, and you can speak my language with me, then we'll be bicultural. So that has become, in a way, a big value statement, or that's become a hope that many of these organisations, with a realistic attitude, desiring to actually genuinely try and be bicultural. Now, how does that help them out? Let's say this has actually happened in one of the spaces, one of the workspaces. Say one of the Māori staff has a family member passes away.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden you have 20, 30, 40 Pākehā work colleagues show up to the tangi.
Nice.
And they can all waiata. They can all waiata tautoko. And what that says, it's amazing.
I've always struggled with this idea of, and I was going to say separatism. I don't mean like, South Africa Day separatism, but that there is a certain person in New Zealand who doesn't acknowledge their connection to the Māori culture. Yeah. I mean, like I often say, I'm so white, I'm almost pale blue. You can see the ginger, the Irish ginger coming through, and that. But I've always claimed, and you know this, that because I'm a part of the New Zealand story, and intrinsically the Māori story is part of the New Zealand story.
Yes.
By definition, I'm a part of the Māori story,
right.
And the Māori story is a part of me,
right.
Even though I'm not. It's not my whakapapa, or it's not my
right.
bloodlines or anything. But because I'm of this land, I'm in this land, it's my country, then that's part of my story.
That's a beautiful way to think, and I wish that a lot of people would actually think like that, because that's a great way to think.
And I wonder, and I used
it's a hard thing to live, though.
It is a hard thing to live because we all have biases. We all see things a certain way, and we all have this natural inclination to go a certain way with what we need, want, and say.
Yeah.
But of my dark days on News Talk TV, and I would always say to people, you'd have these stupid talkback topics like, "What's your favourite T-shirt?" That I've actually heard that as a talkback topic. That's ridiculous. But it would often come up with things like, what does it mean to be a New Zealander?
Yeah.
What is New Zealand? Define as New Zealander. Yeah. And I would always say the only thing, and people can challenge me on this on Facebook or whatever if they want, but the only thing that differentiates us from the rest of the world is the Māori culture.
Right.
Because Australians play cricket.
Yeah.
South Africans are good at rugby. Yeah. People who live in the Pacific Islands have a hot summer.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue the kind of 4x2 mentality of the early pioneers, but still, when you look at the other colonized primarily white countries, our point of difference is the Māori culture. So therefore, the more those of us who aren't bloodline involved, get involved, it's kind of like the more New Zealand we become.
To rediscover our point of difference. And it's the point of difference that makes us unique in the globe. And Te Ao Māori is our point of difference.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I think that, I think New Zealand, I kind of describe that Aotearoa has three primary colours to what makes up modern New Zealand. One is Te Ao Māori, one is Te Ao Pākehā, and then the other one is the whenua, the actual landscape itself. And the combination of those things have created this space. Because I whakapapa to the clan Bruce from Scotland, so my Pākehā side of my family came to New Zealand in 1839 on the first.
Wow.
One of the first New Zealand company ships into New Plymouth, 39 or 40, can't remember. But I look at New Zealanders today, and you just got to go to Australia, you've got to go to England, you've got to go to America to realise that European New Zealanders they're not English. They're not Australian, they're not American. So what is it that has made that difference? And it is te ao Māori. It is by the European psyche being in a Māori space for so long, and it is a European psyche being in this landscape so long, and this landscape has its first layer of description given by the Māori world. So I think those things here. I think when we can see, I believe all of New Zealand become comfortable in Māori spaces and in the Māori world, then I don't think New Zealand's even begun.
Do you think, in your opinion, this would be a bit of a sad thing if it happened, but that you're talking about, New Zealand history starting in schools, you're talking about the woke generation kind of picking up Māori issues and wanting to learn more, but then you think about perhaps the boomers and the war babies at the other end of the scale being less involved. Do you think there's just going to be a natural evolution of maybe more accurate or more true biculturalism as some of our older generation pass?
Yes, I think so.
Do you think that's the only way, though? Can it happen otherwise?
No, I don't. I think it totally can happen by people being present in Māori spaces. If it's unfortunate we've got to pick up public voices, but I do think the likes of say a Don Brash, then yes, there is a sort of a dying off of that sort of a generation, but then his ethos is still living in young politicians or a new generation of political and civic leaders today. And I just think of Tauranga being a classic example of that. But if people were to if people were to have 2 days with Enoka and Christine Murphy in Pūmaumau, then their eyes will go, oh, I see now. I've never known our story to be that way before,
Well, there seems to be two, maybe there's more than two, it sounds stupid having the answer, but two obvious camps of thought when you're speaking with these people who are, shall we say, sort of fighting against it.
Yeah.
One is that they're fighting against it because they don't want to lose.
Yeah.
But they're probably not aware that if they accept it and came on board, they're going to gain. It's almost like they talk about it's a 10-point swing to that football team, rugby team, because not only do they miss a try at that end, they scored at the other end. There seems to be like a double hit that you're not going to lose, and the further you stay away from it, you're not going to get the chance to gain to your life as well. So it's like a double whammy.
Yep, agree. For sure.
You talked about biculturalism before. Obviously, the treaty is a bicultural agreement, but we have a multicultural country.
We do.
So as you were talking there about Pākehā and Māori and the whenua in the middle, I was just thinking, okay, so what about the others? Like migrants to the country. What about that?
And the other fellas.
Yeah, I mean, it's often interesting seeing a new migrant to the country speaking, knowing and understanding Māori more so than people who have lived here for 60 or 70 years. I love seeing that. But what about them and them that aren't the bicultural part of it?
In this course I've referred to twice now, Pūmaumau, so this is the third time, the language of Māori and Pākehā, he doesn't use it, not once.
Right.
And he uses the language of Kazi Bros and the other fellas.
Right.
So the whole 2 days, it's not Māori and Pākehā, it's Kazi Bros and other fellas, which is a good thing. So what about the other fellas? I think New Zealand by we're a multicultural nation.
Yeah.
We are a beautiful place in the planet where we get to exercise manaakitanga, where we get to exercise hospitality for many nations and many people. Now, all of the powers that decide how we exercise that essentially are monocultural.
Right.
So when New Zealand cries, but we're a multicultural country, we're multicultural, essentially at the core of things, where the core of decisions are made,
The seats of power,
the
so to speak.
seats of power,
Yeah, right.
across the spectrum,
Yeah.
we're completely monocultural.
That's really interesting.
So we only have one cultural reference point to make decisions. If we only have one, if we only have one reference point to which we make decisions, we're not multicultural at all. So I think the question of, but we're a multicultural country, aren't we? It's a smokescreen.
So we have multicultural people here in society. It's multicultural, but what you're saying is, until we get biculturalism in the decision making area, let alone multiculturalism, we're actually a monocultural
Country.
Yeah,
We are.
So what about things like, the Māori seats and the Māori Party and these people who are in the seats of power, trying to affect a change? Are they able to bring? Because you're talking about monoculture, I'm thinking about the Westminster system. The imported from England and the Western world is how we do things.
Yes.
Are groups who are more representative within Māoridom getting into those seats of power affecting any change at all?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I would. I think they are. I believe they are. I know they are, and I think it's absolutely necessary. I think we have an increasing. We have an increasing scale to which seats of power are beginning to think, to use the treaty language within their within their structures. And I feel like, I don't think we've fully moved, but let's just say the government for 25 years has made government organisations do treaty courses, or do some sort of treaty professional training or whatever. So what happens is that people go and do the treaty professional training and the box is ticked, awesome. But the treaty, I kind of describe it like the law versus grace. You got this law, you will. And as soon as someone says, thou shalt not, either you do it, or someone says, don't do it, so you go and do it, or whatever. You just
black
go.
And white.
It is. But so as soon as someone says, you've got to do the treaty, you've got to do some sort of treaty training. On the inside of anyone's heart, when someone says you've got to, you go, oh, F you, right? I don't want to do this. So people get dragged along to some sort of treaty training because the boss at the sent them there.
Or the other thing they do, and I'll give you the example of when I got my driver's license back in the early 1900s. You could go and sit a course to drop your restricted license back by 6 months, and you literally sat in a room, watched videos, filled out forms. If you got it wrong, got given the right answer, and then you'd completed the course.
Move on. Right, exactly.
So it's that kind of lip service.
Right. So people have had some form of treaty training, but have left, I would say, non-storied. There's no vision. Like, to me, and this is kind of what I do. What's the vision of Te Tiriti o Waitangi? And the vision of, in a nutshell, is the best of the West, the best of what, say, England at the time or the European had to bring us, and the best of the indigenous mind, the indigenous thought process, the indigenous decision-making process coming together in partnership. So when we can see that happening, then we will have a chance to see the generations after that time truly being bicultural.
Do you think that we're on that journey? Because straight away I think about what you said about a Pākehā New Zealander is different from a white Englishman, and part of that is the influence of Māori, is the difference we have in this country. That implies to me that there is some kind of maybe I'm not saying it's even and there's an even melding, but there's obviously some influence in that area from Māori, from the Māori side of things, the way of doing things at the moment. Do you see that growing? Is it an active campaign for that influence?
Look, absolutely. And to, I don't know who said this, but someone did. Who, those who hope lead, and I think that has to be my hope. A, because that's what my tupuna believed. B, I think that's what justice and righteousness looks like.
Right.
Because that's what it's an emphatic document. Oh, sorry, Tipu. It's an emphatic document in our history, saying that our chiefs will enter into partnership with the kawanatanga, with the crown that's going to run a governing body for us all.
Yeah.
And because, in a nutshell, because of Dame Whina Cooper doing a march in 1971, because of Ngā Tamatoa, protesting at Auckland University, because of Orake and Bastion Point, because of Raglan Golf Course, because of the institution of the Waitangi Tribunal in 1975. So basically, I think because of what the generation of my forebears did in the 70s, the generation to which I was born, bang, we're on the increase. I think as Māoridom, we're on the increase of truly seeing those aspirations of our tupuna lived out in a better way.
You're we're talking before about, like, I used the word consultancy, going into businesses and showing them the way Māori do things. Right. If you had the opportunity to take that idea, that business model into government, what would we need to show MPs, show the Westminster way of doing things to get them to consider doing things the Māori way, for want of a better word?
That's a good question. I think to a degree, every Māori person that is working there now, every. There's a certain face I can see right now who he is Māori, but they know this, they believe this, they have aspirations for this. I think the big problem is the public, and the public don't realise that what the structure, what the actual governing structure itself does to whomever goes into that position and into that space. You can have the nicest person be put into that structural space, but I think the process that needs to happen is that the structure itself needs to be critiqued, because the structure is a bully. I ask the question: why can Jenny Shipley, why can Jim Bolger, why can Sir Geoffrey Palmer, who else can I say? Let's just stick with those ones. Why can these three, even we'll say Helen Clark, be such vocal advocates for Te Tiriti and the Māori world now that they're out of power and not in it?
It's a bit like...
Because there's something in that power structure that is telling them they can't.
It's a bit like in America at the moment. There are a bunch of people, Republicans, coming out criticising Trump, but when you look into it, they're all the ones who are not standing for re-election.
There you go.
They're the ones. They're the ones happy to speak up because they're no longer involved.
Yeah, the structure itself.
They're not going to be called. They're not going to be called on themselves to actually make a change. Right. I mean, if you make that statement when you're in the seat of power, then someone might go, "Well, do something about it." Exactly. But if you make it when you're on the outside, what can you do?
Yeah,
nothing.
And unfortunately, I'll just say the majority of most of our former prime ministers are incredible advocates of Māori rights and Te Tiriti now. Yeah. But when they were there, for some reason, I don't think they could probably potentially even discern this. I think it's a wairoa. I think it's a spirit that is actually stopping them from actually fully achieving that which is truly right and that which is truly just.
So what is it? What's truly right and truly just? What needs to happen?
Look, in a nutshell, my internal vision and internal dream for my life is, I think, when from every basically when every law and every single decision that our government puts down and makes on behalf of every single New Zealander, when every decision can go through the lens of Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Pākehā together and think that way, that's a win.
Do you think that's possible though? I can't think of an example, because I'm just kind of going hypothetically. There would be some things amongst those two cultures that would probably contradict one another. I mean,
and so
who knows what that would be? But
yeah, I mean, I'm in partnership with my wife, and we contradict each other all the time, right?
Yeah.
But you got to compromise, you know.
Yeah, right.
So I think that is the nature of relationship. You know, that's what true relationship does. It compromises, you know. Now, as Māori, we've compromised to the hilt, you know, just to try and better the process forward. And I think when New Zealand, when non-Māori New Zealand, through the structure of the Crown, which is, you know, what the treaty is an invitation for every culture to come and be in New Zealand through the structure of the Crown. So from a Māori perspective, Te Tiriti o Waitangi is a document of hospitality. Hey, you know, no mai, you can be here through the Crown. So I think when that when that process is able to meet at the table and actually hear the Māori mind, see through the Māori mind, and actually learn to be able to make a decision in partnership with the Māori mind, then it's a good thing. It's a win. Like, it's a win for everybody. It's definitely a win for the environment, which is one of the critical issues of our age. Yeah. You know, because the Māori mind relates to the environment as a person, not as a product. So the first thing you're going to make your economic decisions going to be good for the whenua. If it is, awesome. If it's not, then we're just going to leave that one until we can figure out how to make this decision better for the landscape.
Do you think one of the problems with, for want of a better word, selling that story is that people will hear, so we've got to do everything the way Māori want it? And mind you, if they were saying that, they'd probably say, we want to do everything the way Maori want it.
Yeah, probably. You know, I mean, for nearly 200 years, we've done it every way the Crown's wanted.
Yeah, but okay, so here's something for you, right? So this is speaking from a person who works a little bit in marketing.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a package you want to sell. It's a product you want to put out there. So I don't think...
Right.
You know where my heart is, so I can just be blunt. No one else does, so you guys can go away. It's not smart to kind of go, nah, fuck it. It's been 200 years the other way. We'll have it our way for 200 years. That's not going to sell the product. What you want to do is
Zimbabwe, right? That is Zimbabwe.
You want to figure out a way that, I guess, I know that the power imbalance is wrong at the moment, and there is a side already winning, but you want to figure out a way that all sides win in this follow through, but all sides benefit perhaps equally.
Yes.
And how is that done? I mean, that's...
Oh, well, look, I'll just tell you right now.
Well, that's isn't that like the fountain of youth? Like if someone found it,
to a degree, it's a magic trick. Yeah. And that's where... that's where trust comes in. But what I do know now is that New Zealand, we are in we're in the period of our story where we cannot move forward without actually genuinely knowing our story. So no matter what it is, your political decisions, your business ventures, your education, you cannot be ahistorical now. Right. You know, you just you can't do it. And you know, for someone who is a church minister and works in church organisations, you know, that's big reason why I do is because churches can no longer do their mahi without knowing, okay, there's some good parts to our story, but there's some shocking parts to our story as well, where we basically betrayed the Māori world in a blunt as way, you know, until we actually realise this is our story. I don't think we can actually move on genuinely now, and I think but that's the maturing of who New Zealand is. I think we're moving out of hopefully out of adolescence in the globe into adulthood. But if we want to be adults, then I've got to come to grips with, my pimple-faced puberty past, and go, oh, flip, okay, I've got to grow, and to grow means I need to mature.
I wonder if part of the problem is, and you see this worldwide, is that there is a Western ideal that history is not very long.
Exactly.
I wasn't involved in the treaty. I wasn't involved in Bastion Point. It's nothing to do with me. No. Whereas a lot of Indigenous people, you look at people in the Middle East, they remember stories from 1,000 years ago and the wrongs that were done. And I wonder if in New Zealand, not to say they dwell over it and can't quote unquote get over it, but Māori, the whole story is as valid as today.
It is.
Whereas for European, the Western way, like the most important day is today. Probably the second most important is how to move forward. Yeah. And then history, it has some validity, but it doesn't really. I mean, that was yesterday. We could just get on and move forward.
Absolutely. I remember when I stumbled into, say, church history for the first time, I remember going back to my office afterwards and processing it and going, man, what did I just hear? What is all that about? And I remember hearing what I would call the voice of God, the divine sort of the impression that comes to you that whoa, that's left field. Where did that come from? And the thought was this: Jay, the church in New Zealand has amnesia. That's exactly what I heard.
Right.
And I'm like, whoa, amnesia. So the only thing I knew about amnesia was Jason Bourne, right? So
it's a good reference point,
so I turned to Uncle Google and begin to do a little bit of what is the nature of amnesia? And one of the things about an amnesiac, severe amnesia, those with retrograde amnesia, is that when they forget who they are, when they don't know, either where they are or where they've come from, then essentially all they've got is the here and the now. Yeah. So they build their identity on that which is here and that which is now, that which is relevant, that which is hip. And essentially, I know for church life, that's exactly what do we do? We got to do whatever's relevant to the culture now. Let's make that happen. Indigenous people don't think like that. What is relevant to our tupuna is relevant to us now. What is relevant to my tupuna hohepo kōpiri, my great-great-great-grandfather who signed Te Tiriti in Wellington in 1840, that's relevant to me now. He believed in something, and as an Indigenous people who are connected to those stories, that those stories shape our identity now. I think it's when we as Western New Zealanders, when we truly get a hold of that, and I don't think that European New Zealanders they don't, but I think that our starting points need to change, because we might jump from, say, England to being a sheep farmer in the 1840s or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But in that ship ride from Scotland to, let's just say, Dunedin, right? In that ship ride, and whole entire process of Māori alienation happened, so that new person could get off a boat and be gifted a farm because they'd paid for a boat ride out here, right? That's not their start. Their start includes all of this history. So I think once. I remember once doing one of my talks, I had 3 ladies, they were either in their late 70s or early 80s. They came up to me with tears in their eyes, and they said, as Pākehā ladies, they just said, I never knew. They said we were literally taught the opposite in our school.
It's like the Hone Heke. It's like the Hone Heke thing.
And these are dear Pākehā ladies who, in the right space and time, when revelation opens, when a true understanding of history, they want to do what's right, And I think that that's the future of New Zealand, man. That's where we're going.
So that's a good example of not just having to wait for that lovely generation to pass on.
No.
We don't want. Because that would be a really sad outcome.
No, it would be. I believe it would be.
I often reference...
Because they're our kaumātua, man.
Of course. I often reference a story I heard from David Attenborough about the importance of Indigenous culture and how relevant it can be to today. It's a funny example, not funny, haha, because it may not lead into a lot of serious delving, but there is I think it might be on Netflix, a documentary at the moment where he is over investigating the reef, the Great Barrier Reef, and it's like he does it today whenever it was filmed, and then he references when he did it 30 or 40 years ago. Okay. And he talks about this shelf of water that's on somewhere on the Gold Coast, and how he talks about, now that they've been able to map it out using instrumentation and stuff, they can see that the coast of Australia used to go to here, and there was a massive event and a big flood, and they lost X amount of miles of coastline, and it went in 4,000 years ago. Yeah. Aborigines still tell that story. Right. They still tell that. They have a story about the flood, and the story references what only very recently science has proven. Right. Now, it may not add a lot to the conversation around how important communication is, but actually to show that actually, this culture that's been around for so long with a long game, a long vision, that's valid. It actually adds validity to the story. It doesn't take it away.
I think so. And the lessons that I learn and continue to learn from my own people and my own cultural perspectives, knowing that I'm a mature man growing out of my Pākehātanga, or getting a shift, but they're in it for the long game, man. Yeah. It won't happen overnight, but will happen. And it gives me. The West highlights the young. Those who are young and looking good and all that sort of stuff. I know in Te Ao Māori, you don't really have anything to say till you
a little bit grey
till you're old. But. So
that actually just that point there is really interesting. How much value Western culture puts in on the young. Oh yeah. I mean, the most influential people. I was going to say powerful is probably the wrong word, but certainly influential people in the world at the moment. If you listed up the top 100 influential people, a lot of them would be millennials. Really? Oh, I think so. You just think about all the people with the biggest presence around the world, the people who can talk. If it's a silly example, like even on Instagram or something, but the people who are talking to the most people every day, a lot of them are going to be young. Yeah. Or young. I mean, young in comparison to being old. Yes.
Yes. Influence isn't influence enough to sell sneakers, but not necessarily to bring about geopolitical change.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Look at Kanye and talking to the president about prison reforms and stuff. He's influenced that pretty heavily.
Has he really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Or now whether that actually pans. I think that President Trump actually just wants to have cool people around him to get glow. Right. But there's been shift in policy over not reparations but imprisonment and stuff because of the involvement of all people Kim Kardashian and Kanye West.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because that's my life. Episode 7 of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. There's a hilarious comedian called Kyle, I think it's Dunnigan. He's got a very funny Instagram account, and he does this face swap thing. And the face swap thing, he does it where he does a very good president, but he also does a very good Kim Kardashian. Okay. And he has this very funny. Silly to mention it because we don't have it, but that. That's not that one. That's one where she puts her son in the. But that's him. That's Kyle doing both faces.
Oh gosh.
Actually, go to his Instagram. If we find it, we'll play it. About her knocking on the door of the White House. It's very, very funny. It's actually quite a while ago though. So if you went to his Instagram, I'd probably be able to spot it and find it. But anyway.
That's pretty cool how you can do that. Man.
Yeah, face swap. It's scary, isn't it?
Oh no, just your little. Stuff up on your screen anyway.
Yeah, man. Well, speaking of Huia blog, let's bring that up because you've mentioned Huia, and you've mentioned that, and there's been ever since I've sort of known you, there's been quite a strong affiliation with this amazing bird that it's so desperately sad we no longer have. Right. What's Huia Come Home, and tell us about your book.
You're right. Well, so that the summer that we first stumbled into, I use the word stumbled into history. So that same week, my wife was pregnant with our second child, and we'd just heard the stories of Parihaka and Tohu and Te Whiti. We'd heard the story of Rātana. We'd heard the some of the awesome work of Henry Williams and Mary Ann Williams and what they'd been up to. All this incredible history that I'd heard for the first time. Well, actually, there was 50 of us in the room that summer. That was the first time all of us had heard it. My wife has an afternoon nap because she was pregnant with our baby, and in that afternoon nap, she had a dream. And in the dream, she saw a very large chicken that was like 3 stories tall standing in front of a pahutakawa tree. The chicken was so big that, she laughed in the dream like, oh my God, that's a big chicken. And then she heard the word huia. And she heard the word huia and she woke up. And now she's Erin's from the States. So when I saw her next, she said, oh, look, Joe, I just had this short, sharp dream. Saw this ginormous chicken and I heard the word huia. She's like, what's huia? Because she didn't really.
Oh, right.
She didn't know. She thought it might have had something to do with a hui, with a meeting, because that's kind of her limited thing that she knew. And I just said to her, look, it's a a bird indigenous to New Zealand that has, gone into te pō, has passed away. But we sat on the dream for a year, talked about it with 3 people, pondered it, prayed into it. And anyway, the sort of the revelation came when a dear old friend said to us, he goes, it's interesting, the chicken's not from here. The chicken's not from New Zealand. And it was almost like as soon as he said that, it was like, bing, this whole sort of thing began to unfold. And essentially what the dream has come to mean for us is it's a dream of 2 birds. Chickens are not from New Zealand. They're not from Aotearoa. They've been imported into here. Chickens have now become the most popular, the largest species of bird in the world. They've surpassed the sparrow. Why? Because they've become an economic commodity.
Could we eat them?
Our parents would have had chicken once a year, maybe twice.
Really?
Yep. My dad would only have it maybe on Christmas.
Wow.
Most sort of generation of New Zealanders of my parents' age, that was them. We now have it, 6.6 days a week. We have it all the time now because it's become an economic commodity. You get the term pecking order, comes from chickens because they pick the snot out of each other, trying to be the leader of the pack, Whereas the huia, on the other hand, is a bird that is indigenous to New Zealand. These birds were one of the most sacred taonga in the Māori world. So the most images you'll see of Māori people in throughout the history, they've got a feather on their heads. Probably 90% of the time those feathers are huia feathers because they were given to, you had to be a leader of distinction to wear one.
Yep.
You had to have mana. These birds were in male-female partners. They mated for life.
Looked very different as well, the male to the female.
The female had the long curved beak. The Māori had the short stubby beak. And because they dwelled in the old forest, the male was able to pick through the wood to get the huhu grubs on the inside, and the female would, with her long curved beak, would reach down through the log and pull out the grubs. So they worked together. Oh well,
I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So you kind of for them to hunt to their capacity, they need to be in a pair.
They were in a pair. Yeah.
Wow.
The most huia had 12 tail feathers. No, not all. Now, in some iwi, the Māori cosmology, there were 12 layers to the realms of the heavens, and those tail feathers were a representation of each one of those heavens.
Wow.
There's in some iwi, the huia were the gatekeepers to the highest realm of the heavens, so 1 of 4. So to get into where Io Matua Kore dwelt, then the huia was you had to pass through the huia. So within Māori spirituality, they had a lot of mana. They were also known as the leaders of Hakiture, or the leaders of the forest beings. So Yes, but basically all that to say is that we now no longer have them. Instead, we have a chicken that has gone 3 stories tall, and that which is indigenous, that which is unique to this landscape, has sort of gone through into. We no longer have it.
It's not even so much that it's gone. It's that the chicken is not just here. It's the pitch you're giving it, and it's humongous.
It's humongous,
and it's dominating the landscape. The stuff that's not from here.
The stuff that is not unique to this space, dominates our landscape. Yeah, and that which is unique and indigenous. It's not that Te Ao Māori is often to extinction, because it's not, but to the majority of New Zealand society, in a way, it is. So from that dream, Aaron coined this phrase called "Huia, come home."
Mm-hmm.
In other words, New Zealand now is in a time of our history where we truly need to learn from that which is unique and specific to the landscape of Aotearoa. And I think learn from it, not in a, hey, yeah, let's just put a koru on our logo, or, but truly learn the ethos, the tikanga that goes with different things. So I think that's the period that we're in. And you the conversation we started with is the term point of difference. We got to learn from our point of difference, because our point of difference in a globalized culture, it's Te Ao Māori. It's a system of thinking that is embedded in the Māori world. So when New Zealanders, when New Zealand businesses, when New Zealand schools, when our civic council structures can truly learn from, whakaaro Māori thinking and Māori way of decision processes, then I think we are going to come up with new and innovative ways for our communities and for our actual environment that feeds us every day, So that's what the kaupapa Huia Come Home is about.
What you got there, Jace? What do you got for us?
I just remember this ad from years ago. I think it was 2002. And it just makes me think when you're talking about like the point of difference that we have as Kiwis and Te Reo and international scheme. I just remember this ad. I thought I might play it for you, because it's just a really great little sort of. I think it might have been almost when they first started sort of the Māori Language Week. Actually, it's just really. I just thought it was.
Kutane koha. Ke he ke tahi? Ha. Haya harate. He kone ya hau. Espresso. Ya harani te kupu Italiana. Due espresso per piacere.
Grazie.
Tocino mohi o hoki. Anna. Una bellissima lingua.
Lo sai, i Maori sono della Nuova Zelanda.
I just remember, I think they had it subtitled back in the day.
No recollection of that ad.
I think because I remember it being subtitled, and basically the guys in that Italian were saying, what's that language they're speaking? It's really beautiful. And I think the point of the ad was that like Italian is always seen as this beautiful romantic language, but these guys are speaking Te Reo to each other in this really romantic sort of way, and sort of romanticizing the Te Reo language internationally as like looking at this is a thing that
that's cool.
This gift, this thing we have for the world is as Te Reo.
And ironically, the guy who was playing the Italian owner there, he used to run Tonino's Pizzeria in Mission Bay.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, he used to do that on the side. That was his fault.
Oh,
He owned Tonino's Pizzeria, and next to the Shell service station I used to work at it. So here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Right? If
Okay, Pat.
You ready?
Yeah.
You ready for this? This is an important question, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, as he builds it up.
Dun, 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 dun.
Jockeys or briefs.
If your wife had a sleep this afternoon and had the same dream, how big would the chicken be? Would it be the same size? Would it be bigger? Would it be smaller?
I would think it would. I want to say slightly bigger.
Really? Because that doesn't sound positive.
I don't. No, it doesn't. I don't. Well. Yeah, what I do know though, what I would say is that I feel like the huia are flying everywhere in the spirit right now.
Right.
Like, it's almost like there's this karanga mai, ki ngā huia katoa, hoki mai ki tēnei whenua, hoki mai ki ngā tangata katoa. In other words, it's almost like this karakia that is going out and... See, like hands down, I believe the huia exists in the realm of the spirit.
Right.
And they're flying right now, and, they... I think that metaphor is coming. It is coming to life in a big way. Is the huia, is the chicken shrinking?
So just pause as you're thinking that, and let me follow on.
Like,
I think our internet dropped out.
The wānanga's booked.
Yeah.
All this sort of stuff. It's booked out. So I'm like, is that really? But it is. The statistics go, it is dying in the sense that it is just becoming institutionalised.
Right.
It's not going from those education centres out into the public.
Uh-huh.
I think in the 3 years, even since then, we are starting to see the language itself become more out into the public.
So was that a little bit, it's always darkest before the dawn? Like maybe 3 years ago there was a tipping point?
Yep, I think so. I think that, let's say, the two, the girls from Otaraha High School that has led the history petition, learning about the New Zealand land wars.
Mm-hmm.
We now have Putaki o Te Riri, the origin and the source of the battles and the grief that came out. So now we now have an official annual, commemoration of some of the land war battles. So I think we are changing. For me, I have reason to hope that we are coming up. But I think for the chicken to begin to decrease, I think we still got a long way. We got a long way. When you got
three-story store, three-story,
yeah, there's a long way to go. I mean, when you have a deputy prime minister that
I knew that's who you were thinking of when you were Māori in power.
When you have a deputy prime minister that thinks that the right for a Māori ward in the council should go to a vote, when it is the government that ostracised the Māori voice from the political spectrum in the first place. When he thinks that you realise, well, bro, you got a long way to just adjust your thinking, man. Learn your history.
The only thing about that, and I won't say this like it's an okay thing, is I think with Mr. Peters, I don't think anyone knows what he really thinks.
Right.
I think we all know what he really says that plays well to his base. Yeah. Whether he genuinely believes, but that probably doesn't matter, because then if it plays well to his base, it's still encouraging the conversation in that way. It's still keeping it at the forefront. Right. The other thing, I guess, is the only way you can get to this finish point that is this utopia you're talking about, I think, is through these, for want of a better word, through the companies doing the courses and learning about it, and then having the school kids do the courses. You can't enforce something on people that they don't understand. No. So until the education comes, that chicken's probably going to be pretty big.
Absolutely. I do believe that even what I'm believing for, and what I speak about in my work and in my mahi and my speaking and my writing, it is my kids and probably their kids that are actually going to flesh out a true vision of New Zealand.
I guess if you think about it, and I'm not saying Māori lost it over 200 years, but if it's taken 200 years to lose it, if it takes 50 to get it back on some level and find that continue, that's not a terrible timeline.
No, it's not. No,
like you can't expect it to happen overnight. And if it takes a generation or two to get that chicken down to its correct size, compared to how long it's been to get there, that seems to be.
And the only that 50 years is only, it'll be 50 years after the current the current generation in leadership. Actually learns the story. So when the leaders of society, of businesses, of education, of politics and governing structures, when they are competent historians of their own country, then their kid, and they teach that to their kids, then their kids will grow up with a true vision of Aotearoa New
So
Zealand.
that'll either have to come through education through the nation, or it'll come through attrition. So when the current 25-year-olds are the 65-year-olds and are in the seats of power, it'll come that way.
Yep, I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I just know that things can change. Aspirations can shift. Things can happen internationally that cuts the focus of different things. It's like goodness knows. What I do know is that I think anyone interested in history can look back and know that empires come and empires go. Any sober person can go, okay, the West is an empire. Therefore, if it is an empire, then at some point it will have an end point. So what happens when those? I'm not saying that's what's happening. I am saying there's clear signs that where the power strings of the Western Empire are just doing really crazy things right now.
Yeah.
And then the power structures outside of those structures, Russia, China, Venezuela, Brazil, you go, whoa, hang on a sec, there's crazy people doing, anyway, all that to say, I believe with all my heart that Aotearoa is called to be a place that, like I said before, knows how to use the best of the West, but also knows how to use a worldview that doesn't have its origins in the West. It has its origins in an indigenous way of thinking. Now, when all of New Zealand can carry that into their innermost being, can carry that way of thinking, and even go, okay, I don't know it, but know enough to have the wisdom to know where to go to get it from.
Yeah, sure.
I think when every New Zealander can begin to actually think and make decisions biculturally, I tell you what, the businesses that we will create for the globe, the encouragement to governing structures that we'll have to offer to the globe, hands down, we'll be global leaders when we can carry this into our hearts. That's the vision of the Treaty of Waitangi.
And I guess that's what I was going to just say to wrap up. Maybe is that I know it's a poor paraphrase, but it seems like one of the hearts of the treaty back in the day was English. We've gone to all these countries and we've wiped out the natives. How about we try and do it a bit differently this time around and make an agreement with them, sort of thing, based on some of the work done by some individuals.
Yes.
Maybe. Even though many would say that maybe the treaty still needs a lot of work on it today to kind of get it to a point that was the original intention, just purely because there is a treaty. Yeah. This is the only country that can actually happen in.
I believe so. I believe so. We actually have at the founding of our bicultural journey a document that says we're going to do stuff together. Now, for non-Māori listeners out there today, I would love them to go to log in their brains. The Treaty of Waitangi, it is not about settlements. The treaty is about partnership. It's about relationship. We all know how freaking hard relationship is. It ain't easy even in the same culture, right? With the same worldview that you have with someone, let alone with a whole different entire cultural perspective. But it's not about settling. I love Charles Tahukaramu Royal. He says that this generation is shifting from grievance to creativity. The treaty for the future of New Zealand is about cultural creativity. That's what it's about, and we get to lead our country into those spaces.
People want to find out more about Hui Come Home, the book, etc. What's the website? huiacomehome.co.nz. Jay Ruka, thank you for coming in.
Ngā mihi nui ki a koe. Thanks, Pat.
Been a pleasure.
Awesome, guys. Thanks, Jason.